Good morning. I hope all of you are doing wonderful today. I'm Angela Naff, and I'm Reckitt's Chief R&D Officer, and I am just super excited to welcome the Prime Minister and all of you to our Reckitt Hull campus today. Reckitt, you know, is the home of some of the world's most iconic brands. Best consumer-loved brands, things like Dettol, Durex, Finish, and Nurofen. People come to us because they trust us to care for the ones that they love. And this building that we're in is our largest global science and innovation center globally. You can see here the laboratories, people busy at work every day making game-changing solutions to really power the self-care moment and movement within our company. These products give consumers the power to support their own health, reducing the burden on healthcare systems around the world. In fact, according to an Oxford economics analysis, Reckitt supported savings of over £307 million for the NHS in 2023. Pretty impressive. I thought you might like that. So I'm sure it's a great place for us to start our conversation here today. But I also have to say this site is actually where it all began for Reckitt & Sons. So it was back in 1840. We had an opportunity to go to the Heritage Center and spend a few moments. But just think of the legacy, the heritage, all that we've created here, but we're not done. Of course, we look to our past in terms of the greatness and the things that we've been able to accomplish, but it's all about also moving into the future. So very excited to have you be part of that today. So as well as being a major R&D center for Reckitt, we also are a manufacturing facility here located in Hull. And we actually make some of our world-leading power brands from this location, and we export them to over 70 countries globally. We are also committed to playing our role in terms of the community. So we spend a lot of time with local universities, colleges, schools, really involved in creating opportunities for science and technology and innovation careers for all of the amazing people that you see here today, but also into the future. And as a leading British business, we support the government's #1 mission, which is about driving growth. So Prime Minister, we are absolutely honored to have you here with us today and look forward to hearing more from you. Please, everybody, welcome the Prime Minister to Starmer.
Well, thank you, Angela, and thanks to all of you for being here this morning. It's really fantastic to see here, to be able to be here, to see you, and to celebrate what you're doing. This must be an incredibly exciting place to work, because, as Angela said, I went and saw the first bottle of Dettol that you have just in the room around the corner. I think it's 1833 that bottle was made. And for sepsis, what a breakthrough that was, and then so much that's happened in the intervening years. And as we are here, we've got scientists in the labs working on probably the next breakthrough that you will be involved in. So it's really fantastic to come here to talk to you. I've just got a few words to say about the way I see the government playing its part in taking our country forward. Then I've got some questions from you. But let me start with the pledge that we put before you and everybody in the country at the election, because it was a really simple pledge, a really simple pledge. It was on every leaflet, on every advert, on every speech that we all gave. And that word, that pledge, was change. Change. And that wasn't just about an offer to the British people. It was actually a statement about the world that we now live in. Change, because we're in a changing world, and I think you can feel it every day. Great forces buffeting and impacting on the lives of working people. Particularly at the moment globally, where there's an instability, I think, that we can feel that hasn't been there for years, developing before our very eyes in relation to the impact it has on the insecurity of working people across the country. And that's why everything that we're doing in relation to Ukraine is so important. And you've seen the developments in the recent weeks, developments this week, going on even today, because I profoundly believe that if we don't secure a just, peace and a lasting peace, then that insecurity, which we've already felt, will continue. And that means here higher prices, higher bills, the cost of living crisis going on for even longer. If you like, a chokehold on our future, which will be much, much harder for us to tackle. And look, we know some basics. Putin's appetite for conflict and for chaos is already there, and it will only grow. And Russia is already menacing our skies, our waters, our streets, and our national security. And that's why I believe the fundamental task of politics right now is to take the tough decisions on security. And that's why we raised our defence spending, which we also need to use as an opportunity to renew our communities. Because if you like, more now than ever, national security is economic security. And strength abroad, and we definitely need that more than ever at the moment, but that demands security back at home. Because, look, you're not strong if your energy security is exploited by Putin. You're not strong if 1 in 8 young people are not in education or work. And you're not strong if you lose control of your public finances and you can't build your industries. So that is the test of our times. The goal of my plan for change: national security for national renewal. Now look, we are making a start. We're already delivering on this, securing the future through our plan for change, on the priorities that matter to you and to working people across the country. So wages are now going up faster than prices. That's hugely important. We're clearing the asylum backlog at a record rate. And NHS waiting lists are coming down. Now, when we started preparing for today, I was going to say waiting lists have been coming down for 4 months. I can tell you today, the stats have just come out, they've been coming down now for 5 months in a row. And that's in winter. It's really hard to get waiting lists down in winter because, as you know, the pressure on the NHS is much greater in the winter. So that's 5 months of waiting lists coming down. So that's the beginning of the delivery that we need. But given what's happening globally, given the insecurity in our country, now is the time, in my belief, for greater urgency and to go further and faster on what we need to do on security and renewal. So every pound that we spend, every regulation, every decision must deliver for working people. And I don't just mean efficiency, although doing what you're doing, you'll know how important efficiency is. I mean something else, which is allowing the state, the government, to operate at what I call maximum power. So reforming it so it's closer to its communities, tearing down the walls of Westminster, inviting the British people in as partners in the business of change. To some extent, you're already doing that in the work you're doing with the NHS, as partners of the change that we need to do. Having national missions that galvanise the entire country behind them. Businesses, unions, charities, pulling together. The pride that we all have in our country, harnessed to rebuild Britain. Now, I believe in the power of government. I've always believed in the power of government. And I've seen it at its best. I'll give you one example from last year in the summer, when we had those terrible riots. Because what we saw then in response was dynamic, it was strong, it was urgent. It was what I call active government, on the pitch, doing what was needed, acting. But for many of us, I think, the feeling is we don't really have that everywhere all of the time at the moment. At the moment, the state employs more people than we've employed for decades. And yet look around the country. Do you see good value everywhere? Because I don't. I actually think it's weaker than it's ever been. Overstretched, unfocused, trying to do too much, doing it badly, unable to deliver the security that people need. Now, I believe that working people want an active government. They don't want a weak state. They want it to secure our future. If you like, to take the big decisions so they can get on with their lives. So we don't want a bigger state, a more intrusive state, an over-expanding state, a state that demands more and more of people as it itself fails to deliver on core purposes. So we've got to change things. Now, the good news is technology can massively help. If we push forward with digital reform of government, and we are going to do that, we can make massive savings, £45 billion of savings in efficiencies. And AI is a golden opportunity. You will already be thinking about how you use it in your work. And that's an opportunity we're determined to seize. So we're going to get the best of the best on AI working across government. I'm going to send teams into every government department with a clear mission from me to make the state more innovative and more efficient. But we also need to go further and faster on regulation. I want to be really clear about this. This is not about questioning the dedication or the effort of civil servants. It's about the system that we've got in place. And that system, in the end, was created by politicians. The buck stops with us. But that's just it, because over a number of years, politicians have chosen to hide behind vast arrays of quangos, arm's-length bodies, regulators, reviews, you name it, a sort of cottage industry of checkers and blockers, using taxpayer money to stop the government delivering on taxpayer priorities. Now, take our plan to build 1.5 million homes. Now, that is to restore the dream of home ownership, the opportunity and aspiration that home ownership gives people. I've always described it as a sort of base camp for life, the security of your own roof over your head. So 1.5 million homes is what we say we'll build. Now, look, that is controversial. There are people across the country who don't think we should do that. And we always knew it was going to be contentious. We knew that before the election. And that's why we put it front and centre in our manifesto. Because we knew we needed a clear democratic mandate to do what we wanted to do, what we need to do. And we got that at the election. And now we've put it in our plan for change. Yet some parts of the state haven't got the memo. I'll give you an example. There's an office conversion in Bingley, which, as you know, is in Yorkshire. That is an office conversion that will create 139 homes. But now the future of that is uncertain because the regulator was not properly consulted on the power of cricket balls. That's 139 homes. Now just think of the people, the families, the individuals who want those homes, to buy those homes, to make their life, and now they're held up. Why? You'll decide whether this is a good reason. Because, I'm going to quote, this is the reason, because the ball strike assessment doesn't appear to have been undertaken by a specialist qualified consultant. So that's what's holding up these 139 homes. And if you put that in its context, people across Britain are frustrated. They don't think politics works for them. That it doesn't deliver on its promises. How can you justify that in such circumstances? That parts of the state see their job as blocking the government from doing the very things that it was elected to do. You can't justify it. And it's a pattern. I'll give you another example. Environmental regulators stopping clean energy investment. Let's think about that for a moment. Clean energy, really good for the environment. Struggling to get done because of environmental regulators. It doesn't make sense. Jumping spiders, stopping an entire new town. I've not made that example up. That's where we've got to. Infrastructure projects requiring planning documents that are literally longer than the entire works of Shakespeare. We've created a watchdog state, completely out of whack with the priorities of the British people. And it's unfit for the volatile and insecure world that we live in. Now, I don't think for 1 second that's what public servants want to do. You walk around Whitehall, I know we're recruiting some of the best talent in the country. People who join the civil service because they want to serve their country by delivering change. Yet somehow we take that energy, that pride, that patriotism, and we misdirect it into blocking. Well, that's got to end. No more. We were elected to take on the blockers and to deliver change, and that is what we'll do. So we're going to stop the cynical legal challenges that stop building, cut statutory consultees who can veto government activity, hack back the thicket of red tape that stops us getting things done. And look, there's no need to compromise on important things like building standards. And there's no good reason that building and nature have to be pitted against each other on every single site. We can have the best of both. Less regulation, more building, and a massive scale up in nature with a new nature restoration fund. And if you think this is hard enough for the government and the state, and it is, and we're frustrated, and we're going to change it, imagine what it feels like for small businesses. Now, I speak to small businesses a lot, and I spoke to a brewer. She's called Alison from Carlisle, brews beer. She tells me it's proper beer. I'm going to take her up on that and test it. But I'm really struck talking to her how difficult we make it for people like her, enterprising people, to just get on with the job. Trading standards advice, which changes constantly. Long forms on business rates. Not able to get clear advice when they're trying to help. The example she gave was a boiler grant. And nobody could advise whether their business was eligible for it or not. Turns out it wasn't. But she only found that out after hours and hours and hours of going around the roundabouts, filling in paperwork. That's precious time if you run a business, and precious money. Wasted. So that's got to stop. And that's why today I'm issuing a new target for our government. We will make sure compliance costs for businesses are cut by a quarter. Yeah, that's 25% compliance costs that are going to go, and they will. That's less red tape, more delivery, renewing our country with growth. And look, some people are going to say to me, good luck. We've heard all this before, and we've heard some of that already this week. And to some extent, they're right, because the Tories did talk tough and failed to deliver. But that raises the question, why is this time different? What was that all about? First, as ever, you can't discount the chaos that we had under the last government. Then there's the ideology. They never really believed in getting Britain building. Didn't believe in the power of government, which I do. Quite happy to be enfeebled by regulation. But I think there's something deeper about Westminster politics here, which is really important for us to understand, which is there's a knee-jerk response to difficult questions, to difficult lobbies. And the response goes like this: let's create an agency, start a consultation, make it statutory, have a review, until slowly, almost by stealth, democratic accountability is swept under a regulatory carpet. Politicians almost not trusting themselves, outsourcing everything to different bodies because things have happened along the way, to a point where you can't get things done. And I accept that all parties have done a bit of this, including the Labour Party. And therefore today's got to be a line in the sand for all of us. But I also think that in government there was a clear moment when the Tories crossed the Rubicon. It was early and it was decisive. And it sent a signal across Whitehall that was never undone. So today I'm going to reverse it. Because I don't see why decisions about £200 billion of taxpayer money on something as fundamental to our security as the NHS should be taken by an arm's length body NHS England. And I can't, in all honesty, explain to the British people why they should spend their money on 2 layers of bureaucracy. That money could and should be spent on nurses, doctors, operation, GP appointments. So today I can announce we're going to cut bureaucracy across the state, focus government on the priorities of working people, shift money to the front line. So I'm bringing management of the NHS back into democratic control by abolishing the arm's-length body NHS England. That will put the NHS back at the heart of government where it belongs, freeing it to focus on patients, less bureaucracy, with more money for nurses, an NHS refocused on cutting waiting times at your hospital. Now, tough choices won't just stop there. In this era, they will keep on coming. Our task is clear: national security, national renewal, driving change forward with a plan for change, focused on the interests of working people, securing our future. Do we need the microphone? So who's got a question? Let's go here first.
Minister,
Morning.
I currently suffer for looked at every
I'm
day
sorry,
house.
I mean, I'm sure.
Are in a hospital environment, and I also see a lot of patients that wait removing an
got a communications team in the once. If we strip that out, which front line to a problem, we should. I think they're brilliant problems every day. So we want to make sure that power is pushed to them and away from the bureaucracy, which often holds them up. There are many other decisions that need to be taken. I think technology and AI can play a brilliant part in the NHS. There's AI with a stethoscope, you may have seen this, for people who are over the age of about 50 or 60, can detect anyone who's going to have before they have that problem with their heart, which is obviously much better for them and much better for the health service as well. So there are things that we can do, but we've got to be active and get on with it. There's almost there's a parallel in a way with what's going on internationally. Actually, we're moving at the pace of the slowest response. Thank you for being
Incredible place to work.
Yeah.
A re-
And that saves me so much time. I can use my human professional time on the judgment call I need to make the maximum benefit out of this. So good luck with your apprenticeship, and we're going to need you. Yes.
And I work here in quality. So,
And
today,
how long have you been here?
over 20 years.
Yeah. Now, it's always a sign of a good business. When people stay for a long time, that's usually a happy workforce. So this is good.
Yeah, and I've worked in both the factory and on the R&D side as well,
Okay.
so which is great. Today's announcement is about removing barriers and red tape. And as a fast-moving consumer goods, you know, it's really crucial for us to have that speed from conception to market for our goods. How will today's announcement help us improve that speed when it comes to our new and innovative products across our health and hygiene portfolio, which help people to help themselves and obviously reduce the burden on the healthcare system?
Yeah, well, we need to take down the burden of regulation. That's why I've announced today we're going to take 25% out straight away. We've just got to reduce the volume. And I've gone for 25% because I'm looking at the outcome here. What is actually going to reduce the burden overall? And we've got to be clear to get a target to get it out. There are, I don't know how many regulators across government. We've had each department going through identifying every single regulator, putting it all on the table. There's just too much there. So that's why we're reducing it, to make it quicker. But also the response time to be quicker. And to be clear, if we strip that regulation away, we can put some of the money into the areas where we need it. Not your field, but one of the problems we've got with house building is we haven't got enough planning officers. So we've got lots of people who are busily dealing with consultations that I think we could shorten or get rid of altogether. And we haven't got enough people doing the planning decisions. So people are just held in a queue. And it will be the same in other sectors where you're just wanting an answer from the regulator, but it's coming far too slowly to get on with the job. So we've got to get this sense of urgency in there. So thank you for that question. I'll come here for the...
Good morning, Prime Minister. I'm a third-generation housing developer from North East Lincolnshire, and one of our applications is bogged down in bureaucracy. The frustration is we've spent over £100,000 on consultation fees just to get this far. And you were right with the consultations being asked for. We haven't been asked for cricket balls, we've been asked for golf balls.
All right, okay.
So,
can I have that example for my next?
But I mean, and we have, Prime Minister, one of the best planning authorities in the UK, proven. But they still have to jump through all these hoops. I can understand why some of them have to be done for flood risk and safety. I get that. But it's great that you're trying to change the bureaucracy and trying to change the red tape. Does that mean now that new potential homes will now be built?
Yes, and they've got to be built much more quickly. Just before the election, I was up just outside York, where we were visiting a housing development, and they were celebrating that the first batch of houses on the development had just become available and people were moving in, which is fantastic. And I asked them how long the project had been up and running. It was 20 years. 20 years from the plan and the original idea for these houses to the first houses being built. And then I said, when's the last house going to sort of hand over the keys and the developers and builders can go? It's another 5 years. That's a quarter of a century just outside York to get a housing development off the ground. That is not a sensible way to do business. Yes, you can have an argument about where the housing should be, make sure it's the right standard, but you can't take a quarter of a century to get housing through, and you'll have plenty of other examples. We've just got to strip this away now and get on with it. And to go back to this point I was making before, internationally we've got to move at the speed of the fastest. I think in government in this country, let's move at the speed of the fastest, not the slowest person that holds everything up as we go along, and that's why we're making the changes that we have. So I hope to make your life a bit easier as we go forward. Brilliant, thanks. I'm now going to take some questions from the media. I think I've got a list. Chris Mason from the BBC. I think, Chris, I'm coming to you first.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason at BBC News. Picking up on the themes that you've been discussing, for so many people there is a deep-seated sense that a lot of things don't work well at the moment. And you're saying today that your experience in government is a lot of the structures of government don't work well either, which I guess might depress some people and pose the question, how soon can you turn this around?
Yeah, well, firstly, we are frustrated that we can't get things done as quickly as we need to. I've not known a moment like this where the international instability is having such a direct effect on what happens back at home. I think there's more of a connection between the international, the global, if you like, and the domestic impact. Therefore, we had enough to do, as it were, picking up the economy, the NHS, etc. We've got to double down and do that even more quickly. I'm not standing here saying it's the fault of somebody else, because I think too many politicians, when they don't get things done, simply point the finger at somebody else. So we're not saying this is the civil servants haven't got the right mind frame or anything like that. I've actually tried to analyse why is it that we're in this place. And I think that amongst the answers is that every time there's been a problem, a crisis, something's gone wrong in the system, there's tended to be a response, actually in good faith usually, which is let's review it, let's see what's gone wrong, let's make sure it doesn't happen again by making sure we put in arm's length bodies, put the decision somewhere else, have a long consultation and exercise. And once you put all that on the table, what you realise is there's a stack of regulation, there's no end of agencies and arm's length bodies which have accumulated over the years, and most importantly and crucially for me, the power of government has gone, because we've sort of taken power away from government, almost a sense that we don't trust ourselves to take the decisions. We should trust ourselves to take those decisions, get on with it. We'll be held to account. We've said what we want to achieve by the next election. I know I'll be judged against that, and rightly so. Everybody in this room and across the country ought to go into the next election saying he said he would do these things, and has he delivered them? So I should be held to account, but for that to happen, I think we need government to move at pace with a real sense of urgency, and that's why we're taking these measures today. Thank you, Chris. Beth from Sky.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You've just announced the abolition of NHS England. There's about 13,000 job cuts there. You've also talked about an ever-expanding state, signalling, I think, thousands of other job cuts across the state. You're about to announce billions of cuts to welfare, so billions in welfare savings. At your manifesto launch, you said to me, and this is a direct quote, "There will be no austerity under a Starmer government." If this isn't austerity, what is? And do you at least accept that some people will feel that this is austerity again? And if I may be cheeky and ask you a second question.
I knew you'd do this, Beth. I see Beth and these journalists a lot, and they always do this to me. I say, well, you've got one question, what's your question? And then it usually starts with Beth, and everybody does it afterwards. There's always a second.
Well,
So Beth,
really
let's keep up that tradition.
So I'm going to be a bit cheeky. Look, it's about trade, because at the White House, when you were there with President Trump, he said the UK might be able to avoid tariffs. He seems to have gone back on that. We are being slapped with tariffs. Do you hope to achieve a deal in the next few weeks that will get those tariffs removed? Or is this a president where you can't trust a word he says? Because he said one thing to you and now he's doing something else.
Let me take both those questions. Beth, there's no return to austerity. I said that to you before the election, and we're not going to austerity. I ran a public service, the prosecution service, during years of austerity, and I saw what was done in that particular case to our criminal justice system, but it's been done to our public services. And part of the problem we've got with our public services is what was done to them a decade or so ago. So we're not going down that route, and none of our plans are going down that route. When it comes to welfare, there are important principles. We must support those that need support, but equally we must help those who want to get back into work. And at the moment, the system doesn't do that. One of the statistics that I used a moment ago was 1 in 8 young people who are not in work, employment or training. They're just stuck in a world of benefits and support. That is really shocking. I'm not saying nobody needs support, but 1 in 8 young people, they should be here. They should be they should be in the lab, they should be beginning their careers, their life, whatever they're going to do, and 1 in 8, just conceptualise that. That's 1 in 8 young people. That's not defensible. So it's got to change. We've got to reform it. And I'm afraid a welfare system that doesn't help people to get into work because it's set up in such a way that even if you take the risk of coming off benefit and into work, and it doesn't work for you, you end up worse off than when you started, so people don't make that journey. So just as we want to, I don't want environmental regulations holding up clean power or clean energy, because it just seems daft to me to have environmental regimes holding up environmentally good projects. Equally, it doesn't make sense if you want people to have the chance to get into work, to have a system that's set up that makes it really hard for them to get into work. So we need to do the reform. We need to do it in the right way, based on Labour principles. We're the party of work. We're also the party of equality and fairness. But we're not returning to austerity. That's what I said before the election. That's what I say now. On the international question of tariffs, obviously I'm disappointed to see tariffs, global tariffs, in relation to steel and aluminium. But I'm going to take a pragmatic response to this, because we are negotiating and talking about an economic deal and agreement as we speak. My strong view is that that is the better way to deal with the trade that we want between our country and the United States. It's massive already, could be even bigger and even better. That is the pragmatic way to respond. Of course, in the end, all options are on the table, but my response is to keep my feet on the ground, to be pragmatic, to keep ensuring that we keep our eyes on the prize. The prize is not a tariff war, which I don't think is going to be in our interests. The prize is an economic agreement or deal, if we can reach that, that actually covers tariffs and much more besides. And that's what we're in the middle of at the moment, and that's the way I see it. Thank you, Beth. Harry from ITV.
Thank you very much. Harry Hilton from ITV News. You've talked about endless reviews and consultations, not trusting your own instincts. Some people might hear that and think it sounds a little bit like your own first 7 months in government. We didn't hear anything about abolishing NHS England in your manifesto. Do you accept that you weren't prepared for the realities of government and the way it works? And if I may, a second question following Beth.
Told you.
ITV News revealed last week your government's plans to slash billions from the welfare bill. Is cutting benefits a price worth paying if it means getting some people back to work?
Well, look, Harry, let me take it again in stages. Firstly, we knew before we came into government that things would be bad, because that was obvious, I think, across the country, that our economy was damaged, that our public services weren't working very well. The NHS was completely on its knees. I think this breaks the heart of many people, by the way, because my wife works in the NHS, my mum worked in the NHS, my sister worked in the NHS. Many of you will have relatives. The idea of the NHS on its knees was not just a political issue in the election, it was heartbreaking that it was in that place. What we discovered when we came into government was that things were far worse. So the hole in our economy was even bigger than we thought, £22 billion. People say to me, you're just making a political point. I wish, because we've had to make that money up in our first budget. I didn't want to have to do that. Our prisons were full to overcrowding. I talked about the riots just a moment ago when I had my opening words. During the riots, we had an underground room at Downing Street. It's called the Cobra Room, where we were directing our response. I had to have the number of prison places in every prison up on the data set because we were so close to the numbers, because the prisons were overcrowded. No Prime Minister should ever be put in that position. And so everywhere we look, things were worse. So we've got to react to that. And yes, I suppose, if I'm a bit reflective, and I've asked for all the regulatory bodies to be put on the table, said to each member of the Cabinet, I want every single regulatory body that comes within your remit to be identified. I want you to look at them all. I want to put them all on the table and have a look at them. And there's too many. And we've got too many arm's-length bodies and agencies. And yes, my reflection is we've got to cut through that. And that's why we're taking the measures that we've taken today. But just as it were to push back on your challenge, I would also point out that we've had 3 interest rate cuts since we've been in government. That means everybody's mortgage is going down. We've got wages going up higher than prices, which is crucially important for families across the country. And we promised at the election we'd have 2 million extra NHS appointments in the first year of a Labour government. And we've already done it within the first 7 months. And that lowering waiting list 5 months in a row, in a sense, it's what you should expect, it's what you deserve, but it hasn't been done like this, consistently getting those waiting lists down. That is us delivering in government, and so much else on top of that. But am I reflecting on 6, 7, 8 months in government and recognising the problems are greater than we thought because of the inheritance we got, and that there's too much stodge and regulation that gets in the way of us getting on with the job? Yes. And therefore, my reaction, as it is to all things, is to just get on and change it. And, you know, it's just my approach to politics. Lots of people walk around a problem many, many times and do massively brilliant rhetorical speeches about them and change nothing. I tend to look at the problem, poke it, prod it, and then just change it. And that's what we're doing today. On your second point about welfare, I mean, you heard what I said earlier. The welfare system, as it's set up, it can't be defended on economic terms or moral terms. Economically, the cost is going through the roof. So if we don't do anything, the cost of welfare is going to go to £70 billion a year. That's a third of the cost of the NHS. That's more than the Home Office and our prisons combined. So we're making choices here. What we do about, most people say to me, look, I need more police officers on the beat. I want to see the criminal justice system working. I want to know I can walk down my high street safely. But we're going to end up, if we don't do anything, with a bill that's higher than paying for the Home Office and prisons combined. But at the same time, you can't even defend the system, say, look, it's working really well. Anybody who needs help to get to work is getting that help. More people are now in work than before. We're adapting work so that those who've got disabilities can be at work, which is what we should be doing. No, we set up a system that basically says, if you try the journey from where you are into work and anything goes wrong, you'll probably end up in a worse position than when you started. And so, understandably, many people say, well, I'm a bit scared about making that journey. Therefore, we're baking in too many people not being able to get into work. And that's across the board. I use the example of young people because I just think it's so tragic that people who are just starting their journey in life are already stuck in a system that won't let them get to where they need to be, in my view. And that is not a good thing, I don't think, for them or for the country. Thank you very much, Harry. Chris, GB News.
Prime Minister, Christopher Hope from GB News. You said there that every pound must deliver for working people. So here's a challenge from GB News. Is today the day, March the 13th, you call time on woke diversity, inclusion and equity policies and tell civil servants to put the needs of taxpayers, not themselves, first? And to use to take the example from Beth Rigby from Sky News, you said there that Russia is menacing our skies, our waters, our streets. Trump yesterday raised the spectre again of World War III. He said the same thing to you when you were in the Oval Office. Are you going to send British children to war, and how are you thinking about that right now?
Well, Chris, every pound has to be spent rightly. Every pound we have at our disposal as a government is not our money, it's taxpayer money, it's your money. It's money that people have put in expecting the government to use it properly and wisely. And we must keep that in mind with every decision that we make. And that's why we're making the announcements that we make today. We're not slashing our commitment to equality and important issues like that. Nobody would expect that. But we are making sure we're stripping away what is unnecessary. And the examples are coming forward even today. On the bigger question, if you like, of the global stability, we are in a more volatile period now than I think most of us can remember. I certainly feel that, and most people I talk to certainly feel that. And therefore, what we've got to do is keep our eye on the prize, or what we need to do, which is a lasting peace in Ukraine and a secure peace in Ukraine. And that is why we're doing everything we can to ensure that there are negotiations, that those negotiations do lead to peace. It's got to be peace that allows Ukraine to be sovereign and secure. And it's got to be peace that lasts, because there have been settlements in Ukraine before, as you know, which have not been backed up. Nobody's defended the deal, and Putin's just crossed the line again when he wants to. That is not good for Ukraine, it's not good for Europe, and it's not good for us. Because the reason energy prices have gone through the roof in the last 3 years is because of conflict in Ukraine. Impact on your prices, on the cost of living here because of Ukraine. And already, as I say, Russia menacing our skies and our waters, and our streets, in fact, if you look at some of the incidents like Salisbury. So we have to keep our eyes on that prize. Everything I'm doing is intended to ensure that we keep the peace. Nobody wants conflict. And no Prime Minister wants to deploy our troops to conflict, but we do want to deploy them to keep peace. We do that in other countries to make sure that we don't have conflict, and that's why I'm working hard with others to make sure that when the question is asked, are the European countries prepared to play their part in making sure that a deal is defended, then the answer is yes. Obviously, it has to be done in conjunction with the US. I've been really clear about that. and we'll continue working to that end. I do think that the talks on Tuesday between Ukraine and the US were productive. I was very pleased to see that US intelligence and support went back into Ukraine. It's really important that that happened. And obviously we're making further progress, and this Saturday I will convene international leaders again to progress this still further. But it's very important in a time like this to keep our eyes on what is it we're trying to achieve, and that is lasting and secure peace in Ukraine. Thank you, Chris. I've got Tim from BBC. I think we're regional as well here, Tim.
Tim Iredale, BBC Look North. Prime Minister, welcome to Hull. Back in the 19th century, here in the north of England, we had a group of people who were very popular at the time called the Luddites. Fast forward to the 21st century, how would you describe someone who is reluctant to embrace new ways of working? Also, if I may, you're putting a lot of faith here in modern technology. If modern digital technology is so great, how can two giant ships collide in the North Sea?
Well, firstly, let's celebrate being here in Hull. We were here just a few weeks ago for John Prescott's funeral, a great man of the area. And in terms of the Luddites, I think we have to understand, if we're honest, why people are apprehensive about change. And they are. Most people want things to get better. And they recognise they can be better, and actually would put their hands up for change that would make that better. But there is a worry about change. What will it mean for me? What will it mean for my community? What will it mean, will I have to take responsibility for something that might go wrong? So we have to bring people with us on this journey. But what history shows us is that we can't stand still. Every time we've gone through change, it has been massively for the better. Take energy, and we've been through big changes of energy as we've gone through the age of sort of coal to oil and gas, and now on to renewables. They're all big periods of change, but they bring big opportunities with them. This is another moment of opportunity, and we need to bring people with us on that, but we need to seize it, because in the end, if we don't change, we can't deliver for working people across the country. Everybody wants a better NHS. Everybody wants their roads and their railways to work better. Understandably, that is a perfectly reasonable demand. People generally want a safe and secure place that they can live, either in reasonable rented accommodation or ideally buying their own home. None of that can happen without change, and therefore this is both necessary and of huge benefit to people. In relation to the collision, firstly I do want to acknowledge those that are responding to it and have responded for the last couple of days, going out and dealing with a very difficult situation just off the coast here. We're obviously monitoring it all of the time. In terms of the cause of it, that's yet to be determined. There's a process now in place, as you probably know, with an arrest. But we have to get to the bottom of it. But the immediate thing is to deal with the problem in front of us, which is the aftermath of the collision. And as I say, I'd just like to acknowledge the good work of those that are actually out there doing really hard work in very difficult circumstances, which they did not expect to be in. I pay tribute to them. Thank you very much. And I got Michael from ITV.
Morning, Prime Minister. Michael Billington, ITV Calendar. Following the crash between the Salong and the Stena Immaculate off the East Yorkshire coast on Monday, the leader of Hull City Council has been calling for a Cobra meeting. Today, Sir Ed Davey is saying there should be some sort of summit involving the government here in Yorkshire. Why have those things not happened, and what is the government doing to respond to any potential environmental disaster? And following the theme from my colleagues, NHS England has a large presence here in Yorkshire, in Leeds. What would you say to those people who are now worried they might end up on the scrap heap? And how do you achieve any of this without putting pressure on the welfare bill, which you've already described as indefensible?
Yeah, firstly, in relation to response to the collision, we are absolutely monitoring this 24/7, and I've got teams doing that and assuring me of what's going on. At the moment, the situation is reasonably contained, and obviously we will do whatever is necessary, but rest assured this is being dealt with 24/7 by government departments, and I am getting answers through to me because I need to be assured that that is happening, and therefore I myself am plugged in and making sure that we've got what we need. And I'm not closed-minded to whether we need to do something else, but at the moment the most important thing is to ensure that the action that's needed to retrieve and recover the situation is uppermost. I just want that to happen as quickly and as safely as possible. So that's what's uppermost in my mind. Look, in relation to the NHS, we can't, you put to me all of the reasons why nobody ever does anything, because there's always a consequence of a decision. And if the answer to every decision is I'm not going to do it because there can be consequences, you never make any decisions. And then you end in this sort of defensive crouch where nothing gets done. Is it a good idea for the front line of the NHS to get rid of 2 sets of comms teams, 2 sets of strategy teams, 2 sets of policy teams where people are basically doing the same thing? Yes, it is. And it's very difficult for me to look at people who desperately need the NHS, haven't got the treatment that they want at the speed they want through no fault of the front line, say I could do something about it, and I don't think this duplication is very sensible, but I'm not going to do it. That is what's gone wrong in politics, which is an unwillingness to take difficult decisions. And that's why we end up where we are. So we have to take difficult decisions. Obviously, the people in NHS England are hugely qualified, highly skilled, doing a fantastic job. And we will work with them in relation to what comes next. Of course we will, because I believe in dignity and respect at work. I believe in dignity and respect of every single individual. It's one of the most important values that I hold as a politician and before I was a politician. So I'm not abandoning anybody in this, but I can't look people in the eye who say I want a quicker appointment and say I could do something to help you, but I'm not going to do it because you know, I'm somehow fearful of making a difficult decision. I'm not going to do that. I haven't done that in politics. I'm not going to start now. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for being here. Thank you particularly for those that are behind me, because I realise I've been facing this all the way. So I'll come and say hello to you, and thank you for standing all the way through as well. Thank you, and thank you, Angela. It's a fantastic place to be. I want to come and relocate here. Look, this is how we should be working, modern, open.
This is where the action happens.
You should come into Downing Street. It's a little rabbit warren of dark rooms, half of them underground. This is great, so we'll have to do an office swap at some stage.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you so much on behalf of all of us at Reckitt Hall. Thank you, Prime Minister, for coming and sharing your news with us. We are absolutely committed to the growth, and we want to be a big part of that, and the people in this room and around the globe at Reckitt are really, really looking forward to the continued impact that we can have, not only here within the UK, but around the world. So again, thank you for your time today, and we wish you well.
Thank you very much. Thank you all of you.
It's good that